Welcome back to the Crash Course podcast. My name is CraigCrash Collins, not joined, as always, by Brandon Scott, otherwise known as B. Scott. He is not here. He's off being an incredible human. He's giving a speech at the Purdue Dance Marathon, so taking his place for this week is none other than Dan McMillan. You've seen him in chat here, or you've heard me talk about him in chat on the podcast. If you're a watcher of the CraigCrash channel that we stream on, I've played with him a bunch in various games. Dan, excited to have you here on the podcast. We got a lot to get into tonight.
Oh yeah, absolutely. No, glad to be here. Thanks for having me on here. Yeah, my name's Daniel. For those who don't know, go by Dapper Dan. But good to be here. Grateful I was able to meet Craig gaming a few years ago, playing Fortnite and all those games. And we both share a passion for sports here. I'm from Pittsburgh area, so I cheer black and gold everything. Pirates, Steelers, Penguins, yeah.
So, we're not going to get too much into that because, not a whole lot to talk about right now.
No, not this time of year.
Pirates done. Pittsburgh not looking great. Ben Roethlisberger is a shell of his former self, but we won't get into that too much.
Yeah. All bad news bears there.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Dan, tell us a little bit about yourself. You talked about your sports fandom a bit, but just give us a little backstory.
Yeah. So I always loved sports growing up. I used to play baseball as a kid, played a little bit of basketball as a kid, but grew up in the Pittsburgh area. So I love to cheer on the black and gold. I've always been a big Steelers fan, Pirates, Penguins, whatever it is. Like to keep up to date. I always play, fantasy football and things like that. So I always like to keep an eye on that. But
did you win the Streamer League last year?
I did actually.
That's what I thought.
I don't know. I can't remember who I even played the last week.
Dan just drafts the best team ever and then doesn't check it the rest of the year, and then he's I won.
I won definitely. I totally planned it the whole time.
Well, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was going to say, I think I'm the super aggressive kind of guy that drops everybody on their bench and then picks up all new guys every week and then probably starts the wrong dudes every week, but somehow luck into the championship.
Hey, you know what? It's a strategy, so it's a good one to go by. So before we get into our first discussion here, because we are going to talk a lot of playoffs then. We're going to talk about college football playoffs. We're going to talk about the MLB playoffs. No Colts today. Sorry, Colts win a week sooner. We were going to talk about you, but hey, they beat the Dolphins, so not not the best team, but hey, it's off the board. They finally got a win. Yeah, exactly. But we are going to get in the college football playoff discussion first. And so, do you pass the vibe check, Dan? As far as what's your stance on the college football playoff? You like it at 4? You want it to be 8? You want it to be 12?
I definitely would like. I would like 12. I think give everybody a little bit of chance. It's kind of like, you only have so much, conference versus conference play that you get to see, and plus with everybody expanding their conferences, they're playing more and more games only against their conference. So. The alliance might change some of that, but I definitely would like to see the playoff. That way we have one true champion. 4 kind of gets us closer, but I would definitely like to see 8 or 12 in the future here.
Yeah, the 12 team, I've always been like, all right, we're probably going to get 8, but 12 is what, I've been a fan of more, and since they proposed that, we won't get too far into it because we talked a lot about it when it first got theorized, but the 12-team format, which says, hey, the 6 best conference champions and then 6 at-larges, because that means conference championship weekend actually means something, because it doesn't mean anything right now. So, hey, yeah, we're right on the same page there as far as more is better. It's weird because, college football is one of the only sports where they're not trying to inject more playoff teams. They're talking about baseball going to, maybe 14 teams next year, which I think is too much. It's awful. You don't need to play 162 games and then have half the league make the playoffs.
Right.
But But yeah, so hopefully they could get to that soon. But we had a wild week of college football this past Saturday. Number 7 Cincinnati beats number 9 Notre Dame 24-13. Desmond Ridder throws for 297 yards and 2 touchdowns. Stanford upsets Oregon 31-24 in overtime. Oregon goes up 24-17 with 9:32 to play. They had trailed at one point 17-7. Which was at halftime there. Tanner McKee threw a touchdown pass to Elijah Higgins as time expires to tie the game at 24, and then Tanner McKee throws a 14-yard touchdown pass to John Humphreys in the first overtime to give Stanford the lead. They do stop Oregon to clinch the upset. So the aftermath of that is the Pac-12 is officially eliminated, at least in my eyes. Oregon falls to number 8. It's going to be really tough for them to bounce back from that. Arizona State is number 22 after defeating number 20 UCLA this weekend. But, I mean, I don't see Arizona State picking up too much ground there. And so the Pac-12 joins the ACC as power conferences essentially eliminated from playoff contention. Clemson unranked for the first time since 2014. Yikes. Number 19, Wake Forest is the highest ranked ACC team. Although the Demon Deacons are 5-0 with matchups against number 23 NC State and Clemson remaining. So, hey, go Demon Deacons. Go up there and be the ACC champs and make the college football playoff. But yeah, it leaves the top 10 as number 1 Alabama, number 2 Georgia, number 3 Iowa, number 4 Penn State, number 5 Cincinnati, number 6 Oklahoma. Ohio State is 7th, Oregon is 8th, as I mentioned. Number 9 is Michigan, number 10 BYU. Notre Dame falls to number 14 with no ranked teams remaining on their schedule. Why is all this important? Why are we talking about this? Well, it's because right now there's 3 power conferences still alive, meaning that there's only 3 power conferences for 4 playoff spots, and the get out of jail free card that the College Football Playoff Committee usually has, Notre Dame, is not really in contention, and I can't imagine that without any ranked teams on their schedule remaining, they're going to be able to kind of back in to the college football playoff. So what happens? I mean, we do have number 1 Alabama, who will play number 2 Georgia in the SEC title game. October, though, is daunting for the Bulldogs. They are at number 18 Auburn. This weekend they will play Kentucky, who's now number 16 after their upset of Florida, and they will play that Florida team here in the next 3 weeks. All those games coming up at once. Number 3 Iowa plays number 4 Penn State this weekend. Number 6 Oklahoma plays number 21 Texas. They've looked beatable, and little extra research that I did on the side in the playoff era, which I want to take a quick moment to say I am super glad that that there is an era that we can talk about that's like just a few years old, that like you don't have to go back like decades to research. You can just be like, 2014. In the playoff era, Oklahoma has not lost fewer than 2 games. Now, granted, one of those 2 games is typically a bowl game, but that means they're losing at least one Big 12 game a year. I can't imagine that them losing to the in the Big 12 this year and already being 6th, if that's going to really do them any favors. So, and then Ohio State is number 7 right now. They host Penn State on October 30th. They'll face number 11 Michigan State and number 9 Michigan the last 2 weeks of the season. So, it begs the question, Dan. How will this college football playoff shape out? Because it's not like last year, because last year they had their hands were tied again. That's why we had 2 technically ACC teams. It was Clemson and Notre Dame, who Notre Dame was
Notre Dame was kind of ACC, right?
Yeah, asterisk ACC school. So they were kind of bailed out with that last year. We technically saw 2 teams from the same conference, even though they weren't, and we saw that happen. But this year, I mean, there's no clear-cut solution, especially if one of these teams up at the top were to lose.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, as far as ACC and Pac-12 being eliminated, I'm not sure. I mean, right whenever I looked at it, I think the last 7 years, 17 out of 28 of the teams were 1-loss teams. But it's been a little bit of time since Pac-12 has had someone in the playoff there. So, I mean, you never know. I mean, ACC right now, they have 5 teams with 1 loss. But we'll see how that goes. And plus, Notre Dame might end up playing a ranked team later on, because one of those ACC teams might get up there and eventually be ranked. But yeah, that's a huge win for Cincinnati. I mean, as far as them going in there, Notre Dame winning a game, I mean, that's huge for them. Beat the 2 Indiana teams, but Indiana last week, Notre Dame this week. So hate to bring that up to you, but
oh hey, those are
but,
those are two Indiana teams that I'm glad they beat. I'm happy they lost to IU. I'm happy I'm happy they beat IU and beat Notre Dame. I mean, I try not to show off my Purdue bias too much. I always give B Scott his his due for being Purdue bias, but yeah. And honestly, I'm rooting for Cincinnati because that's going to be our first hot or cold question here in just a second. Like, Cincinnati has proven that they should be. I mean, they've got a history. I mean, I even have it in my notes later that like, they've been good over the last few years. Which, I mean, the purists that'll say, "Oh, we can't have a Group of 5 school in the college football playoff, and you can't take what they did last year and apply it to this year." Grow up. We do that with every single team. They do that with, I mean, if you took Notre Dame's resume and put it on any other team like the last few years, they don't get in, I don't think, in some of the circumstances. So, I mean, we all take what the teams did in past years and apply it to this year. And Cincinnati, I feel like, has earned it. And plus, they've got a great coach in Luke Fickell. They've played a lot of really good teams over the last few years and really shown that they deserve to be there. So yeah, I'm happy. I'm quietly rooting, and maybe not so quietly because I tweeted a lot on Saturday. Rooting for Cincinnati to possibly make the jump into the college football playoff picture.
Yeah, I think with Cincinnati, I mean, to me, I liken it to the glory days of the Big East when we had like West Virginia and University of Pitt and a few teams. It seems like for about a 5 to 7 year stretch, they'd have a team that even like Louisville, I think at one point in time, they'd have someone that would reel off 10, 11 or 12 wins. And as always, would they go undefeated? And that would be the only way that they'd have a chance to be up there for the national title. But I think, yeah, with Cincinnati right now, will they be there? Are they a playoff team? I don't know. I mean, even with UCF? I think UCF, they went 12-0 2 straight years, and they still didn't get into the playoff or get into the national title conversation there. So, I mean, as long as we have undefeated Power 5 teams, I don't think they're going to make it. But if we get it to where there's only 2 undefeated teams or only 1 undefeated team as far as Power 5, then yeah, they definitely deserve a shot to be in the playoff. But right now, I think there's still something like 10 Power 5 teams that are undefeated. They'll definitely, probably knock each other out there as we go along. But yeah, as long as there's undefeated Power 5 teams, it's going to be hard for Cincinnati to get up there.
Yeah, and that's definitely true, dude. You're speaking my language. Those Thursday night Big East games, like back in the day when it would be like, Louisville versus Rutgers or West Virginia Louisville, or, even sometimes like West Virginia Miami, or, whatever those games, like, because people forget Miami and like Boston College, all those teams used to be in the Big East. So I mean, that's pretty crazy to think back to those days. Yeah, dude, I love those. That was like one of the best times in college football. But yeah, so let's get right into it then. Hot or cold as it stands now? Is Cincinnati a playoff team? For me, they're hot. I know that you answered to the contrary there, but I think it's a hot take for me because they did beat number 9 Notre Dame, a team that this is, like I said, is one of the committee's go-tos. I mean, when in doubt, they hit that Notre Dame button. It's like the button at B-Dubs where they, press it to make the game go longer. They're like, all right, you know what? We're in a bind. Notre Dame. All right, we're going to put them in. I mean, they've got, I know we've crunched the numbers on here before, but, a lion's share of the college football playoff appearances have gone to Oklahoma, Ohio State, Notre Dame, Alabama, Clemson, all those teams. And so for Cincinnati to beat one of those teams, I think is really significant. And because like I said on Twitter on Saturday, I was like, the crazy thing is that Cincinnati will be 5th and quite possibly 4th by the time the end of the year is winding down, and it will still be a debate. Whereas if Notre Dame had beat Cincinnati, we'd be like, "Oh, Cincinnati's a great team. That Notre Dame beat them, and that's why Notre Dame deserves to be in the college football playoff." Like that's it. It's the same argument a couple years ago with like somebody was talking about, "Oh, we can't expand to 8 teams. Number 8's like Wisconsin." I was like, you're using Wisconsin as a springboard to say Ohio State's a great team. So why are they, a trash team when you look at them by themselves, but when you are trying to bolster up other teams, they're amazing and a great win. So I think that That's significant, and no other undefeated Group of Five school in playoff history has defeated a ranked Power Five conference or Notre Dame during that season. So what I mean is, during Western Michigan's undefeated season, during UCF's undefeated seasons, during the regular season, they did not beat a ranked team that was not already in their conference. So for UCF and Cincinnati, they beat some ranked teams, but they were all in the American Conference. The year for Western Michigan, I think the only ranked team they beat all year was, I think, a Group of Five. I don't think any MAC teams were ranked that year. So this will be the first year that really any Power Five school has had a substantive win. That you can really go back to. They were 9-1 last season. They lost 24-21 to Georgia in the Peach Bowl. Remember, Georgia's number 2 right now. They're looking really good. Which I know, like I said, you'd like to think in a perfect world you're not looking back to past seasons, but we all know they do it with all the other teams. That's why we get the same teams at the college football playoff every year. So I mean, they have back-to-back 11-win seasons going back to 2018 and 2019. So I think that there's enough on the resume right now. Now, granted, if they were to lose, that, there's really nothing you can do there. Like, that's just, the unfortunate part of the game, and why I think that needs to be expanded to 12 teams, is the fact that, like, hey, that one game, if they were to slip up, it's not going to look good on their resume, obviously, especially because now everything's going to be in the American Conference, so you're going to beat a team that, unless you lose to SMU, who is ranked right now,
you're not ranked right now,
you're not gonna get too many favors, and even if you do only lose the SMU, you're still not gonna get any favors. So I think that they've proven enough as it stands right now. They just need to kind of pilot the ship on home to be one of those top 4 teams.
Yeah, I think with me, I did say cold on this take, actually, but I agree with what you're saying as far as the past mattering. It does matter. They have had some pretty consistent production over the last few years, but once again, we're talking about a Group of 5 team, which unfortunately that everybody's going to hold that against them. Notre Dame, this is kind of like their Super Bowl week. This is going to be the toughest team that Cincinnati faces all season, and so they're definitely gearing up for that. And but I mean, it's definitely impressive to win at Notre Dame, but I think with that being their hardest game of the season, and Notre Dame, this is kind of maybe not their easiest game of the season, but it's one of the few teams that they're playing that's not a Power 5 team. So Notre Dame, they're going up against this caliber team week in, week out, 12 weeks out of the season. So I think that's definitely what's going to hold back any Group of 5 team. The past definitely matters. I mean, Coastal Carolina, look at Coastal Carolina. They wouldn't be ranked right now if the past didn't matter. They're 5-0, but I don't know. I mean, you got to look at the way Coastal Carolina took care of Kansas. I don't know. You might want to put them up there top 4, right?
Before you brought that up in the Discord before Travis brought that up in the Discord, I didn't know that they're only. Was it you or Travis that brought up the Kansas thing? Was it?
Oh yeah, the Kansas thing. Yeah, that's what I said. I looked at their record and I was wondering why they were ranked last season, and I looked at all their Power 5 matches games that they had, and they had. I can't remember. I think they had 3 wins. They played 5 games against Power 5 teams. They had 3 wins. All 3 were against Kansas. So, they definitely don't really have the strength of schedule that a lot of other Group of 5 teams might have, even in non-conference schedule. So it's kind of tough for me to see them ranked right now.
Yeah, because I think they've benefited off of, I think, a weird 2020, because like last year we had like Liberty ranked at one point, San Jose State, which look, I'm glad Ball State finished the season ranked. I'll take it every day of the week. But Ball State was ranked at the end of the year. San Jose State at one point was ranked. Buffalo at one point was ranked, and I think it was. I mean, I don't know. I guess 2020 was a blur, so I can't remember if like the MAC teams played more games technically. So because the Big Ten was only playing 6 games and the MAC was playing a full schedule. Like, I don't know how it all worked out. But looking at you brought up all the undefeated Group of 5 or Power 5 teams. I mean, you've got Alabama and Georgia who are undefeated. They'll play each other. Iowa, Penn State will play each other. When Penn State also has to play Ohio State, which I know isn't an undefeated team. You've got Oklahoma, who is undefeated. And yeah, I mean, if Oklahoma finishes the season season undefeated. I think they're one of the 4 teams. You've got Michigan, who they'll, they have to play Ohio State and then the potential Big Ten championship game if they make it there. Michigan State's, same kind of deal. So a lot of those teams will go down as the year goes along. Like, I don't think Kentucky's going to stay undefeated, if I'm being real honest.
I was going to say Kentucky. You got Kentucky 5-0, but they just beat Florida, I think. But,
well, and the thing is, too, is, like, I mean, I don't know. It would be weird because, like, it's been so, like, if Kentucky... Because Kentucky's in the SEC East. I don't think they play... I mean, they do play Georgia, obviously, but I don't think they play Alabama at all this season. Let me look at their schedule real quick.
Yeah.
Because I was like, it'd be wild, because, like, that's... I'm interested to see, because we've seen it happen to the Big Ten, where, like, the Big Ten favorite team, Ohio State, like, lost, but then still made it in, even though, like, 2 different teams, Penn State, Wisconsin, that was 2016 or 17, played in the Big Ten championship game. They don't have Alabama on their schedule, so it'd be interesting to see if, like, Georgia the rest of the way could, find a way, win that game against Georgia here in a couple of weeks, or if, well, no, even if they lose to Georgia and then Florida beats Georgia, that's still bad for them. But that would be interesting. And then you've got, dude, I don't even think if Wake Forest goes undefeated, like, do we even, like, because there's only one other ranked team, it's NC State. Like, they beat NC State, but they're only number 23. So, like, if they, like, can the ACC get above? I think the ACC right now, that's what I'm saying about them in the Pac-12. I think the ACC's only saving grace during the college football playoff era has been Clemson, except for that first year with Jameis and Florida State. And the Pac-12 has just had Oregon year 1 with Mariota, and then the Washington year with, was that Jacob Eason with Washington? I don't remember, but yeah, that's why I think that's why I think both of those conferences are done.
Locke, I can't remember now, but I mean, one thing I was reading was someone was saying how the ACC, they've just looked a lot better on paper because they've had Clemson every season, but in reality, the Pac-12 was a much stronger conference just because of its depth. But now we've kind of flip-flopped to the point where Clemson no longer is, the shining beacon for the ACC anymore, but they got a little bit more depth with a lot of different teams stepping up. Wake Forest, we got NC State. Even I'm going to say my dark horse here, the Pitt Panthers. I mean, they're using their super senior quarterback. What's his name? I have to look and see what his name is here again. Oh, Kenny Pickett. So I don't know if you've heard about this guy, but Kenny Pickett, University of Pittsburgh quarterback. He has 19 touchdowns, 1 interception, 350 yards a game. They're averaging 52 points a game. So I don't know. I'm going to say they're a dark horse to take the ACC Coastal there. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, heck, anything could happen. So real quick before we move on to the MLB postseason here, I want to ask, who is your top 4? For me, it is going to be Alabama. This is like playing out the rest of the season here. If I were to do my 4 right now, it would be Alabama at 1, Penn State 2, Cincinnati 3. And Georgia / Oklahoma, because, and the reason why I say that, I don't mean to pick 5 teams. Who is your 4? Everybody. Everybody's in.
Plus 5.
Yeah. But if Georgia loses because remember, I think in this situation, the committee is okay with 2 SEC teams, but there's got to be style points. If Georgia loses on a controversial call, if Georgia, it's an insane comeback by Alabama to beat Georgia like it was last time, like that, like the closer and more entertaining that Alabama-Georgia game is, the more likely it is that both teams get in, like, no matter what, as long as they're both undefeated at the time that they play. But if Georgia either gets blown out in their loss, or the game's not interesting at all. It's like 7-0, and the teams, of course, I guess we saw that with LSU and Alabama in 2011. They played a 9-6 snooze fest, and that was still the national championship that year. But like, if the game's not very good and Georgia loses, then Georgia's out, and Oklahoma, I think, is in. I think, that would be an interesting thing to see. My 4, like I said, Bama, Penn State, Cincinnati, Georgia. I think they would want to put that rematch of Alabama-Georgia week 1, because I don't think you would want to see, although I guess it depends. Georgia's the wild card because it depends on how, they play in that game, because they could also put them at 3, so that way you get potentially Bama and Georgia in the national championship game if that game was really entertaining. But that would be my 4 because I think Penn State to me, I think of the Big Ten teams right now looks the best. I don't trust Iowa. Iowa's definitely had the lighter of the two schedules. They beat Iowa State, but we've seen how Iowa State's played, losing to not only Iowa but also Baylor, and then struggling to beat UNI week 1. And then you've had Cincinnati, who, like I said, I think is a playoff team. You've got Georgia, who their only loss would be to Alabama or Oklahoma, who would most likely be a one-loss Big 12 champ.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, as far as I hear you saying Oklahoma is like kind of like right on the outside looking in. I mean, the other thing with being a WU fan, I see a little bit more Big 12. And WU actually almost beat Oklahoma. So I'm like, yeah, if WU can almost beat Oklahoma, then Oklahoma's not going to have a very good season. I mean, of the 5 games that Oklahoma has had, only one of their games did they win by more than a touchdown. And I think that was against, who was that? That was against Western Carolina Catamounts. So I don't know if you knew Western Carolina were the Catamounts, but that was the only team that Oklahoma beat by more than a touchdown. So they've been playing real close games. I really don't think that I don't think they'll be a playoff team this year. But as far as my top 4 here, let me get back to where I was here. So Penn State, I kind of agree with you as far as Big Ten. I think they're kind of the cream of the crop there. But let me just run down my top here. So number 1, I actually have Georgia number 1. So Georgia, the one thing I looked at, their defense is just suffocating everybody they play up against. I mean, I think they allowed 3 points to Clemson. They've played Clemson and then 3 SEC teams, and they've allowed 16 points total, 16 points in all to those 4 teams. So they're averaging 4 points allowed per game against good quality opponents. So, I mean, I think Georgia right now, they're just killing teams with their defense. So I put actually Georgia number 1, Alabama, I put number 2. I think that's going to be a great matchup between Georgia and Alabama. I'm really excited to see like how that goes throughout the season. Iowa, I put number 3, even though I feel like Penn State will beat Iowa this weekend. Right now, I think Iowa has a little bit of a better resume. Even though like Iowa State, I kind of feel the same with you. Iowa State's not going to be much, but I mean, they did beat Maryland, which I think Maryland's going to fall off, but right now they're like 4-1. So they beat them pretty well. So Maryland's only loss was to Iowa. So we'll see. I think they have a little bit of a better resume right now over Penn State, but I think Penn State will probably end up winning against Iowa there. Penn State, they did win against Wisconsin, but Wisconsin kind of fell off the map.
Yeah.
They have their win against Auburn, but other than that, Ball State, Villanova, Indiana.
Hey, don't discount the Ball State Fighting Cardinals, man. Don't you say
that. So I mean, that I don't know how much that registers for me, but right now I have Penn State as my number 5 team, but number 4 went a little bit off the radar here. I know you have Cincinnati up there, but I went Brigham Young, BYU. BYU, they've already beat 3 Pac-12 teams. So I kind of like where they're at. I think they went 11-1 or 12-1 last year. Yeah, I think right now they're 5-0, and they beat Arizona, they beat Utah, they beat Arizona State, and then they also won against, I think, Utah State, who I think was they're no good right now. But anyway, they won. They won three Pac-12 games, which is pretty good, and we'll see how they go the rest of the year. But I'm going to say Brigham Young is my top 4 right now. I don't think they'll finish in the top 4, but right now I'm going to go with them as far as anyone outside the Power 5.
Hey, I mean, honestly, that's not a bad pick in the sense that, I mean, yeah, they're 10th right now. Michigan or Ohio State will drop below them. Whoever wins that game at the end of the year. They'll Oregon. So what they need too is they need Arizona State to win the Pac-12. That would be the shining. Because the committee already doesn't look on the Pac-12 very highly. So if they're like, oh, well, you beat 3 Pac-12 teams, although that's still significant for a group of 5 team that they've considered inferior football anyway. But Yeah, I think Arizona State winning the Pac-12 would greatly help their chances, and like that's possible. Oklahoma losing is possible, so like they do have like an outside shot, especially if Cincinnati loses. I mean, yeah, I'm talking about a lot of teams losing in front of them, but that's like all possible. It's not like, oh well, this is a great team that they're expecting to lose. And one last thing on Georgia too. Is that what's impressed me? Because I mean, their defense is always typically good. Kirby Smart is an amazing defensive coordinator, even back when he was with Alabama. But that offense, like 37 points, you know, this past weekend against who was it? I think it was Arkansas. Yeah. I mean, their offense typically like they've usually like play well against those teams, but like they also usually win like 24-10 or like 17-3. Like it's never they like dominate all aspects of the game, so that's been pretty incredible. But very interesting to see how the college football playoff shapes up this season. But that's off in the distance. The future is going to be the MLB playoffs, and we'll get to that right after we talk about the friends of the show. First, we want to talk about Anchor. That's who allows us to put on our podcast every single week. You can go to anchor.fm. You can either record right to the site itself, or you can pre-record it like we do every single week. Upload it to there. They keep an archive. They distribute it to every podcast app: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. I don't know if there's any other sites out there besides Anchor, but Anchor's been amazing. B. Scott and I went from SoundCloud to Anchor, and the difference is night and day about what you can do for free. So that's nice. And then also, I mean, look, I'm a cheapskate. I got a free editing app. I use Audacity, which is free. Like it's all about maximizing this the budget here. But we've got Anchor. We've also got Eat Lunch and Board Game. That's a podcast that my cousin does, Adam, talking about board gaming and the connections that it can make for you, like at work and things like that. He's got a guest usually on every week. So you go check that out. He's a big supporter of what we do here, so go support him over there. Also reminding you can follow us at 3C Media Sports on Twitter. Facebook's back up, guys, so be happy about that. Crash Course Podcast on Facebook. Excuse me. You can also go to our YouTube channel, 3C Media. We have this podcast. We've got some YouTube-only content, including the MCT podcast. Those guys are killing it. You can also follow us, 3C Media, on TikTok. Got some TikTok-only content over there. You can listen to us every week on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify. And then we do record the podcast every week, twitch.tv/CraigCrash. We've already had some people in the chat. Dusty, mainly, who is basically ended his friendship with you, Dan. I'm assuming from something you said about Alabama.
Picking Georgia over Alabama. So
yeah. He's talking about some games he's watching. So welcome, Dusty. As always, glad to have you here. But yeah, those are all the ways you can listen to the podcast and catch the podcast. So make sure you're locked in there, especially because now it is time to get into our MLB playoff preview. The whole 162 game season has come and gone. One of the podcasts I listen to for baseball is Talking Baseball by John Boy Media, and I was like thinking today on my drive home when I was listening to their wild card preview, I was like, I feel like it was just yesterday they were doing like the team previews. Like it's the season went by, like it's 162 games. You wouldn't think from like April to September it would feel that fast, but it feels like it went fast. But we're already time for playoff baseball. I'm thanking my lucky stars that at least one team I picked to win the to make it to the World Series actually made it. The Padres, rest in peace. I don't know who your favorite going into the season was, Dan, but hopefully they're still in it. Who did you at the beginning of the season? Who were you thinking?
See, I don't know. You got me a little bit of a disadvantage here, Craig, because my team, I'm used to checking out of baseball right after the All-Star break here.
Right.
So, I mean, being a Buccos fan, it's like I see who the Pirates are trading away, and then after that, it's like, okay, I'll see y'all next spring. So, but no, I mean, I think I was a little bit surprised to see Tampa Bay up there. I shouldn't be surprised to see them up there again, but it seems like they always do well. Dodgers, I was kind of thinking they should be doing well again. So, I mean, I feel like Dodgers and then always someone from the AL East is going to be there, it seems like. But
yeah, I mean, what's surprising about the Rays is that, like, it's kind of like like, you expect them to have a downgrade. I mean, they trade away Blake Snell. They get rid of Charlie Morton, and you're like, all right, well, this is probably going to be it for them. They're going to be mediocre for the next few years. I'm like, no, actually, we're going to be one of the best teams in baseball. We're just do they have a right arm? Then we're going to throw them out there, and they're going to throw 6 innings of shutout baseball. Like, it's nuts.
Well, that somehow they get people to trade for, was it Chris Archer?
Yeah.
Who was like a middle of the road, maybe third starting pitcher, and we traded up Tyler Glasnow, we traded Shane Baz, who actually got in, I think like 15 innings, 3 starts this year.
Yeah, he's been
Austin Meadows. So they have like 2 all-stars and then another guy who's top of the rotation quality. Just for one guy that we got, I think maybe 2 years or 2.5 seasons of, and he didn't even pan out. So that's how they do it. That seems to be how they do it.
The joke is on Talking Baseball is that, like, if the Rays inquire about any players that you have, like, hold them back for like a year and be like, what do you know about this player that we don't know? Because if the Rays are interested in that player, then they're going to be like a sneaky good player for you for the next however many years.
Immediately an all-star.
Right, exactly. It did come down to the wire this season. Game 162. Probably, I mean, there's been some exciting last days of the season in recent memory, but I'm thinking I'm going to go ahead and say this is maybe one of the more exciting ones since 2011 when you had like all those different scenarios in the last day of the season. This year you had the Giants who needed to win to clinch the NL West. They defeat the Padres 11-4. The Dodgers, who win 106 games, will host the wild card game. One bad pitch and their season might be over. That's not going to be on Wednesday. The Yankees and Red Sox in the wild card. Seattle and Blue Jays were 1 game back. The Angels defeated the Mariners 7-3. Great, Angels. The one time we need you to lose, you decide you're going to get some offense going and win. The Blue Jays beat the Orioles 12-4 to stay alive, but the Yankees defeat the Rays 1-0 on an Aaron Judge walk-off single, and Rafael Devers hits a 2-run blast in the top of the 9th to push the Red Sox past the Nationals 7-5 to set up the Red Sox hosting the Yankees in the wild card game on Tuesday. So that's what we wanted to get into here, is we wanted to preview the wild card game. So as it stands right now, we're going to kind of lean a little bit more heavy wild card game preview, and then for this podcast, and then when the MCT boys take it later on in the week, they're going to get more into the AL and NLDSs and so on and so forth for that. So the wild card action all starts, if you're listening to it on the audio version or watching us on YouTube, it starts tonight. If you're watching us on Twitch, it is tomorrow night on Tuesday. Yankees 92-70 at the Red Sox 92-70. The probable pitchers: Garrett Cole for the Yankees. He's 16-8 this season with a 3.23 ERA. Nate Eovaldi will start for the Red Sox. He is 11-9 with a 3.75 ERA. The Red Sox lead the season series 10-9. It's gonna be a fun game. I mean, it doesn't get much better than Yankees Red Sox. This will be the first wild card game for the Red Sox since the wild card game became a thing. I want to say, was that 2011 or 2010? When did, because the first NL wild card game was Reds Pirates, wasn't it? Wasn't that the Cueto game where they made Cueto drop the ball in the middle?
Yeah, Cueto.
Yeah.
Yeah. They had a good stretch there
with good old Russell Martin. No way, that was 2013. So yeah, so it was around that time though. 2011, I think, might have been the first year for the wild card game. But regardless, first trip for the Red Sox. It is the third trip for the Yankees. So Yankees have been here before, 2015 and 2018 and 2017 actually. So they've been to 3 wild card games, now 4. So question is, who do we predict is going to win? And honestly, like with both of these, like it's a toss up for me. As far as, either of these games, because there's so many extra factors that kind of go into it. It's not like a clear cut, like going into past wild card games, I could be like, oh, well, it's, this is the team I want to see win. Like, I figured granted, I guess I was wrong in this instance, but like the Brewers seem to be clear cut winners over the Nationals. Like you thought, okay, well the Brewers, they're just too good. They're going to beat the Nationals, and of course the Nationals did end up winning that game. But there was like a clear-cut favorite. This year, there's not really one. I mean, you've got Eovaldi this season, who is 2-2 with a 3.71 ERA against the Yankees this season. The Red Sox won the season series, as I mentioned. Garrett Cole has struggled against the Red Sox this season, 4-4 with a 4.91 ERA. But Garrett Cole, though, since the All-Star break, when Dan checked out on the season, Cole is 2-1 with a 3.71 ERA versus the Red Sox. The Yankees are 10-3 against the Red Sox since dropping the first 7 games versus Boston this season. They were 0-7 against the Red Sox this season, and then won 9 of the next, however many games. So they have been on a hot streak against the Red Sox, including a sweep of the Red Sox in Fenway 2 weeks ago. And I just trust, I just trust the Yankees bullpen more. So I'm going with the Yankees. I mean, I don't know. There's a possibility, I guess, that maybe Chris Sale might come out of the bullpen. He only pitched 2 1/3 against the Nationals on Sunday, so there's a possibility he could come out. Eovaldi's good. I mean, heck, we saw him pitch 6 innings in relief and extra innings in the World Series a couple of years ago, so Eovaldi can pitch really well. But, I mean, besides that, I mean, you've got Pivetta, who they've got closing down games. Adam Ottavino's been shaky. Matt Barnes, I don't even know if he's pitching at the moment. I know that he's struggled as well. So they've struggled. The Red Sox have struggled as far as the bullpen is concerned. The Yankees, they've had their struggles as well, but their pitching in general has just been better, and I think that's why I'm going to go with the Yankees.
Yeah, I'm going to say the Yankees pitching. I mean, talking about the end of the season, that was quite a crazy last weekend there. Kind of felt like the last week of the NFL season with playoff positioning coming down to the wire. So I do kind of like that with the wild card, but I agree we don't need to expand too many teams there.
Yeah, that's what I was just getting ready to say. Is that the last week of this, the last month of the season would mean nothing if you made it 14 teams. Because I think if you expanded it, right. I mean, Seattle's already in, Blue Jays are already in.
Exactly.
The whoever. So I mean, you would have so many teams already in, and the last month would be literally just meaningless baseball. But the thing is, the owners would still want it because of more money, and so there's no real middle ground there.
Exactly. So that was pretty exciting. That was cool to see. As far as I'm really excited about the wild card game. It's like you said, it's sometimes there's a clear cut team that's maybe a little bit better than the other, but this year it kind of seems pretty close, and you never really know. I mean, one game, it's like the NCAA basketball. I mean, one game and you could be out. So sometimes it comes down to the pitching matchup. So I actually really like this pitching matchup because I saw it a week and a half ago. I got to visit Boston, got to see Cole versus Eovaldi. Yeah. So I got to see the first game of the sweep by the Yankees, and I actually saw this matchup. So this is pretty interesting. I mean, Garrett Cole, he went 5 very, very strong innings. At one point he was having a no-hitter, and I said, hey, by the way, Cole hasn't given up a hit yet. In that inning he gave up a hit. So
Dan, come on, dude, you know the rules.
Sorry, Cole, I jinxed you. I got to see his very first pitching matchup ever in his entire lifetime, and so I got to see him again then. So that was fun. But Eovaldi, he actually I think his ERA raised about half a run that game, because in 2 2/3 innings he gave up 7 runs. So I think Judge and Stanton, all them kind of made him pay for some bad pitching that night. So we'll see. I don't know if this will be a rerun of that night or if Eovaldi will be back to his normal self, but I'm kind of with you there. I'm picking the Yankees. I mean, I think Garrett Cole, he's always been a stud as far as when he's been with the Yankees, maybe not when he's with the Pirates, but as much. But when he's been with the Yankees, he's been a stud there. And their bullpen, they have Chapman at the back of their bullpen. Here's a guy, I don't know if you know about Clay Holmes, guy that the Pirates traded away this middle of this season. He was a nobody in Pittsburgh, but in 28 innings, he has a 34-4 strikeout to walk ratio. So he's a guy to look out for in the back of their bullpen too. So I got to see him whenever I was up there in Boston. So yeah, I think their bullpen is going to be good there. So I'm actually going with the Yankees as well to kind of take that game against the Red Sox.
Then on Wednesday, it's gonna be the Cardinals at the Dodgers. The Cardinals 91-70 at the Dodgers 105-56. Probable pitchers: Adam Wainwright for the Cardinals. He's 17-7 with a 3.05 ERA. Wainwright's like 40 years old, so he's like, I guess he's the like MLB equivalent of Tom Brady. I don't know about that.
There you
Just
go.
without all the championships, I guess, although he's won two. Max Scherzer for the Dodgers. He'll take the ball. 15-4 with a 2.46 ERA. Had been, up until his last two starts, had been lights out since being traded to the Dodgers, and just had a rough couple of goes of it against the Padres and the Rockies. But looking at this matchup, as far as who I'm going to pick, so I really had to stop myself from picking the Cardinals, just because my rule with the Cardinals is if they win 95 to 100 games and win the division, they're going to lose in the NLDS. Like, it happened. It happened a few years ago. They lost in the NLCS to the Nationals when I think they won the Central that year, and then the year that they won 100 games was the year they played the Cubs in the 2015 NLDS and lost in that series. But it seems like when the Cardinals are a wild card team, and they're that like scrappy underdog like they are this season.
Right, the dark horse, the underdog, yep.
That's when they rally. I mean, they built their...
They win 17 in a row.
Right, yeah, exactly. They win 17 in a row, make the playoffs.
Come out of nowhere.
That's how they won the 2011 World Series, was they just came out of nowhere and ended up winning the whole thing. So... that I really I'm not gonna be surprised if the Cardinals beat the Dodgers. I know a lot of people who might be on Twitter like, oh, how could the Dodgers choke this? Like, no, this is just the Cardinals. Right. This is the magic that the Cardinals bring to the postseason every single time. So I wanted to pick the Cardinals, but there's just so many things about this matchup that I like better for the Dodgers. Max Scherzer's 2-0 and has not allowed a run in 14 innings against the Cardinals this season. That's also with 22 strikeouts. Adam Wainwright, his only game against the Dodgers this season, he allowed 4 runs in 8 1/3. He did get the win, but obviously he's not going to be allowed to go 8 1/3 if he gives up 4 runs in this game. If he gets shelled early, they're going to go. It's going to be a quick hook for Wainwright. And then they're also talking about Jack Flaherty possibly coming on in relief of Wainwright. Flaherty, I think, in a normal season would have been the guy for this game, but he's been hurt a lot this year. Flaherty is 1-1 with a 4.70 ERA since returning from injury in August. So I think the Dodgers pitching staff is a little bit more sound than the Cardinals pitching staff. So as much as the Cardinals... almost said, I love what the Cardinals are doing. Don't love that. Cubs fan, never love what the Cardinals are doing. No, but even though the Cardinals in this kind of situation usually thrive, there's a lot of things this season they're doing, like Nolan Arenado's on fire right now, Goldschmidt's on fire right now. So the Cardinals will go toe-to-toe with the Dodgers. I just think as far as predicting how this game will go, I think there's more things I like about LA.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's one game, right?
Right.
So you never know how one game's going to go. I mean, Dodgers, they were one of 3 teams with over 100 wins. So you definitely want to kind of bet on them. They're for a long time. They had a reputation of doing very, very well during the regular season, then choking in the playoffs, but they kind of got over that hump finally. But yeah, I mean, it's one game. St. Louis, they've won 17 in a row there. But for me, it's kind of hard for me to pick against the Dodgers. I mean, if you look at their lineup, I mean, every single one of their players, they have great hitters there. I mean, if you took any one of their positional players and put them on the Pittsburgh Pirates, then they'd be the best position player on the Pittsburgh Pirates. So other than maybe Brian Reynolds. But yeah, I think they just have too much firepower there, even with the magical run that the Cardinals have had. I think the Dodgers are going to somehow find a way to take this one, and even with Scherzer there, somehow take this one and go to the next series.
Brian Reynolds, man, he was amazing for my fantasy team this year. I'm so glad that I picked him up. Hey, me picking him up because I traded. I mean, this is what I do every year. I traded Bryce Harper, before he got hot, towards the end of the season. So I picked up Brian Reynolds. He was doing awesome. Harper was in a slump, so I was like, clearly, Brian Reynolds is going to be better than Bryce Harper down the stretch. So, I went with that. So, but yeah, I mean, there's just, like you said, too many things to like about the Dodgers in this matchup. So, it's gonna be crazy. It's one game to decide it all, and I think there'll be two entertaining games. But now, as we wrap up, we're gonna talk about our rest of the playoff predictions. And how we usually do this, Dan, is I'm gonna tell my American League, then you go with the American League, National League, vice versa. So, we're just gonna predict how we think the rest of the postseason is gonna play out. I'm gonna start in the American League with the ALDS. So the first matchup would be the number 1 seeded Rays against who we predict our wild card winner to be, which is the Yankees. And this is it just seems like the Rays have had the Yankees number the past couple of years. The Yankee, like we saw it last year in the ALDS with the same exact matchup. We've seen it during the regular season as well. And the Rays, I like what the Yankees are doing right now, but I have more faith in the Rays pitching staff. I think they get it done. The Rays win that series and advance to the ALCS. Then you've got Astros against the White Sox, and this matchup. What's going to be fun about watching this matchup is they're going to be replaying the 2005 World Series highlights from when these two teams were in opposite leagues. But I've got, as much as I'd like to pick the White Sox because they're a fun team, they remind me of the 2015, 2016 Cubs and how they've kind of had a young core that's kind of come up all together. The White Sox have not only struggled against good teams, they're backing into the playoffs. They once they won the AL Central and wrapped all that up, which was even when it wasn't officially clinched, they had it wrapped up in late July, early August, and they've kind of put it on autopilot, and it's really tough when you put it on autopilot to then ramp it up again. So and the Astros, they've also had the A's and the Mariners in their rear view for a long time, but it just feels like they've been playing better baseball down the stretch regardless, and they've had to play tougher opponents. So I think the Astros win that matchup. That sets up the ALCS with the Astros and the Rays, and as much as it hurts my heart, as much as I never want to see the Astros play in the World Series again, I am picking the Astros to beat the Rays. I think both teams have really good pitching staffs. I think the Astros have a pitching staff that can go even with Greinke having a rough year, even with no Verlander. They've got a pitching staff that can go toe-to-toe with the Rays. And then as far as hitting is concerned, I think the Astros hitters are just a little bit more consistent, especially come playoff time. Kind of reminds me a little bit of I'm going to bring up that team again, the Patriots, where, they just have those, it's hard to bet against that lineup in the postseason. So I think the Astros in a much more uneven circumstance last year with the Rays being so good and the Astros being a wild card team that barely made it in. The Astros still took the Rays to 7 games and nearly won that series. And I think this year, rematch of that series, it's going to go differently, and the Astros are going to win the American League this season.
So those are good picks. I think I kind of went pretty close to you there. The Rays and the Yankees, same thing. I was looking at it as you. It seems like the Rays have their number, but everything that I looked at made me think that I should pick the Rays. But for some reason, just seeing the Yankees in person, they're able to get clutch hits. Their hitting maybe isn't as good as I'd like it to be, but their pitching is good. They have a great bullpen. For some reason, I just feel like the Yankees are going to do something this postseason. The way they fought really hard to even get into the postseason, maybe even the wild card game, if they're able to win that, I think they're going to do some clutch things there, maybe to get through and over the hump of beating the Rays there. So I actually did pick the Yankees over the Rays, even though the Rays were another one of those teams over 100 wins. I think the Yankees just fought really hard to get in the playoffs, and I think that momentum just kind of keeps going. They have Judge, they have Stanton, they have Rizzo, so I think they have enough people there to get the clutch hits and kind of get over the Rays. Astros and White Sox. I feel like the White Sox, they were kind of up against a weak AL Central. And so with that, they're able to win the Central, get everything wrapped up. Astros, though, they just have all that postseason experience and that team that's been together for a while. So I think they're definitely going to take the White Sox there. The Astros hitters, they're just too good. They had the second best OPS and all of the AL. Also, their pitching, I think, was top three. So I think the Astros will win there. So that'd bring the Astros and the Yankees and the ALCS. So I think the Yankees luck runs out there. The Astros just too much for them. I did pick the Astros as well to go to the World Series. So yeah, American League, Astros over Yankees. So unfortunately, we're going to see the Astros there again.
Yep, we both have the Astros in the World Series. Who are they going to play from the National League and the NLDS? I've got the Dodgers over the Giants in the NLDS. Number 1 seeded Giants against the Dodgers, who win the wild card. In that matchup, again, like the way I'm looking at it, because I mean, the Giants. The Giants and Dodgers are close in pretty much every category. It's an even matchup. I mean, there's a reason why both teams won 100 games and neither, only one, and one team's got to play in the wild card. I mean, they're so close. They're so good. And so I do think that the Dodgers in this instance, I just am banking on their playoff experience. They've been through this before, for better, for worse. Sometimes it's been for worse. Sometimes it's been for better. They've got more experience, whereas the Giants, I know that the Giants' first title, like in 2010, they, didn't have a lot of experience either on it, and that was a really good team. But at the same time, I mean, Kevin Gossman, Logan Webb, they've got a lot of good young players, and I think they're going to be, I think this winning is going to be sustainable. Maybe not every other year like they did a couple years ago, but I think they're in line for some sustained success there. But they're just a lot of their starters, especially, and a lot of their playoff guys, a lot of their rotation, especially, have just not pitched in the postseason. It kind of reminds me a little bit of, when the Dodgers played the Padres last season. Now, granted, the Padres aren't nearly what the Giants are this season, but you could just tell there was that experience versus the inexperience. And so that's what I think is going to play out here for the Dodgers. So the Dodgers end up going to the NLCS. Brewers against the Braves. Now, the thing is here, the big kind of wild card, the caveat, if you will, is the fact that the Brewers do not have Devin Williams, because Devin Williams, in a fit of happiness, punched a wall, broke his hand, and will be out for the postseason. Feel sick for the guy, because it's not like
that's tough.
It's not like he got like, oh man, I blew an inning and got mad and punched a wall. Because when I first saw that he broke his hand by punching a wall, I was like, dude, even like you're in the playoffs, like even if you have a bad inning, like it's fine, you're still in. It didn't cost you your season. Yep. But no, he was happy, and I was like, I've been there. I've been happy and punched them before. So I get that. So yeah, they won't have Devin Williams, which is a big blow to that bullpen. Right. But still, they still have a good bullpen even without Williams. And that pitching staff this season, man, Corbin Burns,
oh my gosh.
Brandon Woodruff, just they've been
Peralta, Hauser, Lauer, right. Yeah, it's like everybody.
Yeah, they've been absolutely insane, and they just have more pitching depth than the Braves do. The Braves, I like Charlie Morton. I love me some Max Fried. I'm going to bring up my fantasy team like a loser again, but Max Fried was my replacement for Clayton Kershaw after I decided not to keep him. And he was my lefty, and he did really well this season. So big on the Max Fried train. So they've got really good pitching as well, but I like the Brewers pitching better, which neutralizes the fact that the Braves, I think, are a better hitting team than the Brewers are. So, but I do think the Brewers end up winning that matchup. That makes it to the NLCS, Dodgers and Brewers, and this is where I think not having Devin Williams, not having that extra cog in that bullpen really affects the Brewers. Maybe not like it's gonna, drastically, affect their, how they go about things, but not having that extra bullet against the Dodgers is going to be tough. So I think because the Dodgers are a team that can match them pitcher for pitcher, that can, match them hitter for hitter, and has a better hitting team that can compensate for the fact that the Brewers have really good, pitching, with the fact that they have just, basically an all-star team. So I've got the Dodgers beating the Brewers, which sets up a rematch of the infamous 2017 World Series between the Astros and the Dodgers.
Yep. Yep. So, yeah, excited about the NLDS there. I mean, we have Dodgers and the Giants. So, I agree with you. Very good matchup. Both won over 100 games. So I thought it was interesting. Like what you were saying as far as the Giants, they have some young guys that should be able to help them with sustained success. But it seems like, yeah, they kind of came out of nowhere for me. I mean, they got a lot of names there, but to me, it's kind of like I thought they were over the hill, and it's something that eventually they're going to have to, break apart. Like the Cubs,
Evan Longoria, Darren Ruff. I mean, all these like guys that have been kind of this. It was an island of
Buster
misfit
Posey,
toys. Yeah, island of misfit
Brandon
toys
Crawford,
this season.
Evan Longoria. All these guys that it just seemed like they're all over 30. They're on the wrong side of 30, and it just seemed like to me like, where did this come from? But they put together a great season, and obviously won over 100 games. So I mean, they had, what was it? They were number 1 in OPS. So I mean, they're definitely great at hitting overall, and number 2 in ERA. So definitely their record speaks for how great of a season they had. The Dodgers, on the other hand, every single person in their lineup, other than Cody Bellinger, it seems like they're they have hitters everywhere, all across the diamond there. And then, of course, they're going to have their starting pitcher that's going to bring it there as well. So, I mean, I did end up going with the Dodgers. I just think they're going to be too good. It's kind of tough to pick them, judging that they have to first win that wild card game. But I really feel like the Dodgers are going to advance in the wild card and also beat the Giants. Brings us to the Brewers and the Braves. Brewers, had a great season. Their starting pitching was just lights out. They have a bunch of young guys there. I think they have 5 starting pitchers with a sub 3.3 ERA, and 3 of those have a sub 3 ERA. So they're pitching 2 point something, which is just unreal. So I mean, they have so much great starting pitching and enough hitting that I think they'll win over the Braves, who are coming kind of out of a weak NL East there. So picked the Brewers over the Braves, Dodgers over the Giants, which I think were the same picks as yourself. And then Dodgers and Brewers. That's going to be tough for me to pick. I mean, I really, really like the Brewers starting pitching, but the same thing with the Dodgers. I just think they have both the pitching and the hitting that's going to get them there. So I also went with the Dodgers over the Brewers. I just think that they have a great team, and they have, the postseason success from last year. So I think that's going to carry over. So I did go Dodgers over Brewers and then LCS. So that also brings me with a World Series that were Dodgers over Astros. Didn't mean to pick the same thing as you there, but that's kind of where the stats led me to in those picks. So.
Look, we don't, here at the Crash Course Podcast and 3C Media, we don't pick contrary just for contrary's sake. If we want to pick the same thing, it's fine. I mean, we can get way off the reservation and be like, hey, what? I think it's going to be the Braves, and it's going to be, the Red Sox in the World Series. I think that's how it's going to pan out, which, I mean, heck, it could, with as crazy as the year's been.
Heck, Dodgers could lose that first game, and then it's all out the window.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, what's wild, too, is that, like, the Dodgers are that team in, like, you brought up the NCAA tournament with the single elimination. They're that team that plays in, like, the play-in game, at the beginning of the year, like, the 11-6. Like, Michigan State this year, they were, it was funny, I had seen all, like, the memes on, like, Twitter and TikTok about how, like, yeah, I picked Michigan State to beat UCLA, and then Michigan State to have a deep run, and then my bracket benefited because UCLA won, but then that seed kept on winning, right. And so you just reaped all the benefits. So that's what happens here, where you have the Dodgers. You're like, oh, well, the Dodgers are going to win this game, so it's fine. I can just pick them all the way to the World Series, and then if they lose, you're like, oh, well, I guess that throws everything out the window.
Well, my bracket.
Yeah, well, the Dodgers too, we mentioned their playoff woes. It just didn't seem to pan out for them. That's why I picked them last year at the beginning of the season, before the season started. I picked it to be the Dodgers won the World Series because 2020 they're gonna win the fluky season that everyone's gonna discount because 2019 they run into a miracle Nationals team. 2018 they run into the buzzsaw that was the Red Sox. 2017 they were literally playing against a team that was cheating. And in 2016 they played the Cubs, who were amazing, and ended up winning a World Series themselves. So I mean,
best team ever.
Best team ever to grace a baseball field. But yeah, so I mean, the Dodgers. I think getting to the World Series pick here, I couldn't bring myself to pick the Astros over the Dodgers. I want the story of the Dodgers making it to the World Series against the team that, against the team that cheated against them. No questions about it this time as far as like, hey, there's no cheating. There's no shortened season where you can discount the Dodgers World Series, which I don't think anybody really worked because they won like 40 of 60 games last year anyway. So, but I in the World Series, I do have the Dodgers over the Astros again. Like I said, when it gets down to that point, I'm just rooting for the story. I said it when we were doing our IndyCar preview a couple of weeks ago. I was like, you know what, I want the story. I don't really. Right. I mean. I in this instance, I actually do care who wins because I don't want to see the Astros win. But I want the Dodgers to win. I think they've got the roster to do it. Pretty much for all the reasons why we mentioned it. I mean, both teams have great rosters, but I just think the Dodgers have a better roster, better pitching than the Astros. Again, they're a team like it was kind of a joke during the World Series last year that like it was the Dodgers and Rays, and the Dodgers are the Rays but with money. And that's what the Dodgers are. They'll play the Astros really well, but I have the Dodgers beating the Astros in the World Series to win back-to-back titles. It was tough for me because it was like there haven't been back-to-back champions since like 1999, in 2000. So it's unlikely that we'll see another repeat winner. But I am going with a repeat winner.
Yeah, it's kind of hard for me sometimes. It kind of feels like chalk, but it's like, I mean the Dodgers, they have such a great season. Once again, I feel they'll be going up against the Astros. They closed the season really well in September. They have that lineup. I mean, Corey Seager, Max Muncy, A.J. Pollock, Will Smith, Mookie Betts. I mean, all these guys, they're just raking out there. So it's like I feel like they have such a great lineup that it's not going to falter in October here. They have enough pitching that they shouldn't have an issue there. Once again, number one ERA in the National League as far as pitching there. So I mean, I think that's just going to carry over. I'm hoping that they win that first wild card game and carry all the way through. But they get their revenge, get their win over the Astros, and we'll have a repeat champion there. But since I'm picking them, it's pretty much guaranteed that it's not going to occur. But I'm going with the Dodgers.
This is the land of the crash kiss of death. All right. Yeah, I don't know I don't know if you know the story of that, but basically when B Scott and I had the radio show, and actually it was after B Scott was there, but the streak of bad picking started with B Scott, and then it bled over like that whole school year where I picked the Rangers to win the World Series. They lost the AL West. That's when they had like a game 163, lost the A's, and then lost in the wild card game. I picked like all the 5 BCS games wrong because I wanted Northern Illinois to beat Florida State. That was like my one layup, and I was like, no, Northern Illinois will win because Maction. And then I basically I picked Michigan to lose in the first round of the NCAA tournament. That was the year they almost beat Louisville in the national championship game. So I had a really bad streak of games. So that's where the crash kiss of death was born. And so look, this is the land of like, hey, if we're picking one thing, run to whatever app that you use for gambling and bet all your money. Yeah. Don't actually do that. On the team that we picked against, because that's the team that's probably going to win.
Yeah, to me, whenever it comes down to true false or 50-50, I'm absolutely the worst whenever it comes to 50-50. So same thing, like if I'm going to Vegas and I say one thing, just do the exact opposite of what I said, and you should be fine. You should be leaving with money. So Dodgers are virtually assured to not win this season.
What's wild, too, is the fact that like we're talking so highly about the Dodgers who are in the wild card game, who just lost Clayton Kershaw for what seems like probably the entire postseason because he's got some elbow issues. They lost Max Muncy for an undetermined amount of time. I don't know what his injury was. I learned about that like later last night, and don't really know what the details are there. But like, and we're still talking about how they're like, oh yeah, they're winning the World Series. It's fine. They don't have their like AL MVP or they're like their all-star MVP Cy Young pitcher, and they don't have their, which I mean you could honestly say which one at this point because they've got Urias, Walker Buehler, and Scherzer, and they don't have Max Muncy. It's like it's fine. We have Mookie Betts, Trey Turner, Cody Bellinger if he gets hot. Because I mean you mentioned Cody Bellinger was like the one guy for the Dodgers not hitting well, and like that's the 2018 NL MVP, 2017 NL MVP, whatever. So I mean it's wild like how much depth they have.
Right. Yeah. I feel like if anything, if my Dodgers pick doesn't pan out, I'm feeling like the Rays. I don't know. They just seem to always find a way
Yeah.
to win games, and it doesn't make sense to me. But that would be the only other team. But we'll see. I don't know. Dodgers have had a great season. Giants have a lot of wins, but I don't feel like they're going to be there. But yeah, Rays, another 100-win team. They might be the one to go for.
All right, well, that will do it for this week's edition of the Crash Course Podcast. Thank you guys all for tuning in. Remember, you can follow us at 3C Media on Twitter. You can like us on Facebook, Crash Course Podcast. Go subscribe to the YouTube channel. What are you doing? 3C Media on YouTube. You can catch a lot of YouTube exclusive content like the MCT podcast. We got a vlog up there as well. So a lot of great content there. 3C Media on TikTok. We've got some TikTok only content that you guys might enjoy. So go over there and check that out. Remember, we stream live every week, twitch.tv/CraigCrash. If you want to tune in, be in the chat. We again thank Dusty for keeping us all entertained in the chat like always. Talking about his Alabama Crimson Tide, which, I mean, whatever, man. We all, you can root for the evil empire if you want, I guess. But no, and then remember that you can listen to us every week on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, wherever podcasts can be heard. You can hear the Crash Course Podcast. Dan, where can they find you?
So Dapper Dan WV on all media. So whether it's Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, Dapper Dan WV, West Virginia fan here. So you can find me there. Thanks for having me, Craig. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man, you did a great job. Really enjoyed having you on, and yeah, you did a really great job. I'm glad we had you this week.
Yep, absolutely. Good stuff, man.
All right. Well, next week we will. I mean, hopefully the Colts will win again, so we can talk about them next week. And get some talk about that. Going to likely talk about that with B. Scott as well as a lot of other great topics. So it'll be a fun week next weekend as well. But until then, have a good week, everybody.